Good evening. Good evening. I hope that y'all are having a wonderful Sunday evening. You all happy June. Welcome to the month of June. I hope that if you're on summertime, which we're talking about, if you're on summertime, I hope that you have had an amazing start to it. Got some sunshine, right? Maybe a little surf as well. But definitely grateful for you all joining this evening. Well, yeah, we've been talking a lot about questions, and we're going to continue to do so because questions are important, but also focusing this evening on beyond the answer. Right? We're asking questions, but are we really understanding what the children know, right? So this one is for parents and educators, y'all. So again, we might be in our summertime vibe. You might be thinking Grover Washington Jr., right? Fresh Prince, depending on your demographic, your generation, really summertime vibing. And so we know that with summertime, that means more free time, maybe more mess, but definitely more moments to learn if we know what we're looking for. So that's some of what we're talking about this evening, making sure that we know what we're looking for. So whether you're helping a child prep for the next grade, maybe y'all are reading together, or you're just noticing and paying more attention to how they're moving in the world, how you, how we ask questions makes all of the difference. That makes the difference. So we're going again beyond the answer. Y'all, we're decoding what kids really understand without turning your home into a classroom, okay? You have to set up full shop. We're going to make sure you have some look for, some go to moves. Okay. Matter of fact, if you're in summer mode already, go ahead and drop a sun in the comments. Go ahead and drop a sun in the comments if you are already in summer mode. I know a lot of the Southeast schools and districts are in a whole, right? The kids might be on their second week, going into their third week almost of their summer vacation. But y'all check in. Let me know if you're on summer mode or no, Anika, we're still navigating these last few weeks, right? These last few weeks of the school year. Let me know. So, one of the things, y'all, where we're going to start is being clear about what understanding really looks like. If we want to make sure we're asking questions so we understand what they understand, so we know what they know and understand, we're going to talk about some look fors, things to help you know what real understanding looks like, okay? So, a quick contrast. So, we're going to think about memorized answers, just kind of like that default, almost a reflex answer response that young people give us sometimes, versus prompting them for a more meaningful explanation. And I know it's kind of almost overused, but we're going to talk about some common red flags. Yes, there's red flags in education. Yes, there's red flags when it comes to young people's development and their responses and things. So just making sure we know, again, what to look for, what it sounds like, getting specific this evening. So, a memorized answer, you might hear sometimes someone might say, hey, it's just 42. That's the answer. But the meaningful thinking, the response behind it is, okay, it's 42, but I got that because I doubled 21. Or I know it's 21 because I did the same thing as three sevens. They're giving some more elaboration. They're giving you some insight into their thought process, what they were thinking, right? So the memorized answer we might have heard, and y'all let me know if any of these sound familiar. Well, because that's what it said in the book. What? Okay, memorized answer, just that reflex response, very short, no elaboration. A more meaningful response would be, well, I think the character changed because he started to think about other people's feelings. So they told you what they were thinking and why. Okay, a memorized answer. Well, that's just how I did it. That's just how I always do it. Versus the meaningful response, elaborated thinking. I noticed that every even number could be split in half. So that's why I decided to split this number in half. So making connections, finding patterns. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. Yes, yes. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, yeah. Some people checking in. I said, make sure you drop a sun in the chat, y'all. Let me know if you are in a space where you are in summer mode. Drop a sun in the chat. Let me know if you've entered summer mode. Okay, someone said no students, but wrapping up. Hey, hey, yes, y'all. Good evening, and thank y'all so much for joining. This is a good one, right? Just some mindset things, just some things to think about, to look for, and to act on as we're cruising into. Maybe you're in the midst of summer mode. Things to look for, so we know what the young people know in home life, and again, if we're helping them and kind of helping them practice some skills for school, or we're just helping them navigate in the world. So speaking of, if we have a home application, maybe your child just finished a workbook page, and instead of saying, okay, did you get them all right? What if you asked, which one was trickiest and why? If you had to teach this to your friend, if you had to tell, right, your younger sibling, what would you say? How would you explain it? Educator side, educator application. So maybe you're in the midst of summer programs, tutoring, or intervention, right? A lot of that happens during the summertime. So we could ask, how do you know that that's the best strategy? Right? Because at this point, we've been giving students a lot of different tools to use. A lot of different things are in their toolbox. How do you know that this is the best example to use at this time for this question? What would change? What would happen if the numbers were different? Y'all, all of those quick questions or thinking about it differently, right? The questions we're asking to have a better understanding of what they know, y'all, we're making sure that we aren't falling for the default answer, the memorized answer. Sometimes the answers that they memorize will sound complete, but they will not give you access to their brain. So let me say that again. They might sound complete. They might say, okay, well, I know it's 21. Um, I multiply 7 times 3. But they really didn't give you access into their brain. Like, what made them choose that strategy? How did they know this was appropriate to approach that particular question? So if there's a meaningful response, it always is going to reveal a few things. It's going to tell you the reasoning. It's going to give you some identity things. Like, they're going to make sure they talk about what categories, what they understand. They can name some of the concepts, right? So some identity things, habits, right? Patterns, habits, AKA patterns, and then growth. They're making those connections. So meaningful responses, meaningful thinking reveals all these things. All right. You all, I told you. I told you. Oh, I see all the signs. Okay. Yes. Some people are in summer mode. I love it. I love it. Yeah, y'all seem super excited about it. And I'm right there with you. Love it. Love it. Love that for you. Y'all, some common red flags. So, yes, yes. The shallow thinking, they're not trying to reveal anything to us. They don't want us to know. All right, y'all. FR, for real, for real. In the chat, let me know when these sound familiar. Say yes, that one. Tell me something, okay? So some of the red flags that signal the shallow thinking. When you ask the student about, right, a concept, they're learning, it could be chores. I just knew it. Maybe they say, I always do it like that. Maybe, well, you didn't teach me. You didn't teach us this. You didn't teach me how. I forgot. Right? They just throw it out. So let me put a bit of a caveat, a caution, a little asterisk, right? A star by the I forgot. So the I forgot is if they say that without any attempt, right? If they didn't try to explain, if they didn't try to construct a meaningful response, but that was just, it was dismissive, is the best way to explain it. I forgot. Y'all let me know. I know. Let me come really lean into the chat because I know a lot of us have heard those things in response, right, to questions. Whether it's at home, at school, I know we have heard those things. The yes, okay. A few of those, Anika. Somebody might say all of them, Anika. Yes, I've heard those. But you know what? Although those aren't responses that we want to hear, they're not bad responses. They're protective responses. They're protective. So their signals, right? We talk a lot about feedback and what we understand, what we're recognizing as feedback. This is another one of those moments. If we're getting those type of responses, that's feedback, you all. Those are protective responses that and a signal that we haven't created a certain type of space for the children, for the students. That maybe we haven't modeled, given space, given time for them to reflect. Maybe we haven't created space, modeled, given time for them to make connections or for them to explore and experiment with ideas. That's really what we should take away from those type of responses. But I know a lot of times when people hear those responses, they might get defensive, frustrated. But part of this conversation is to encourage us to look beyond that because it's really more of a protective mode thing. So we're looking beyond whatever we thought it was. That's not what it is, right? We're adding more context. We're adding some depth to our understanding, so we can know better what the students understand. Okay. When we're spotting real understanding, a lot of times people say, okay, well, is this right? Think about error analysis. Y'all know how much I've talked about error analysis, how much it is lives deeply in my heart. Okay. Love it. But we can't just ask, okay, well, is this right? So we want to flip it to ask more of an angle like, what's your reason? Right? What's your reason? Why did you choose this? Y'all know why. Right. And so sometimes that psychs people out. I'm saying the young people though, when they first meet me, okay, well, yes, I agree with that. Why? Then they'll say, oh, no, I don't agree with it. And I say, okay, I'm still asking why. But they were just trying to get out of it. Not understanding that, no, I really want to understand. We really want to know what you're thinking, what your thought process is. Let me be clear. A young person's thought process academically mirrors their thought process socially, right? If they want to rush through, take shortcuts, and aren't used to elaborating and aren't used to spaces where they have to explain or justify, that shows up in their world over and over again. Okay, so we're making sure we're working on being consistent to give them those spaces academically, socially, how they need it. A big deal. Educators, we do really well with wait time. We do really well with wait time. We ask a question, then we lean in like this, right? We're waiting. We're giving them some time to process. Now, what I found is, I'm going to be honest, sometimes I have to put parents in timeout. I have to call timeout, put them in timeout. And what I mean by that, right? In a supporting way, in a loving way, is that a lot of parents don't like the wait time because they're assuming that it's struggling and causing their child stress, which it could be true. They might be struggling some, but struggle is a part of learning though. You have to let them wrestle with it in their brain for a little bit. You have to give them some space to figure it out. Now, might they make some errors along the way? Yes, but we have to give them some space to at least do some exploration, make their own conclusions, make some connections, and sometimes they connect it correctly, right? Especially when we're talking about just different topics in terms of academics versus social, right? But then we're right there to support, but not to do it absolutely, right? We can facilitate, we can get more into coach mode, but there is a mode where if we're in coach mode, the child has to perform the sport. They have to perform what we've trained them for, what they've been practicing for, right? Classroom life. Eventually, we've taught the lesson. We have to be quiet and give them space to show that they understand. They have to demonstrate what they know, and then we can adjust as needed. But I'm finding, right, a lot of conversation, we're working with the student and then conversation with adults. You also, and not being funny, working with the young people. And sometimes I can hear the parent, well, make sure you click right there. And the answer is, and I say, Mama, Daddy, no, no, no. It's like, let them struggle. Then I tell the young person, because that's its own thing. I'm like, okay, when Mrs. Jones says that she's going to let you struggle, it's because I want to give you some time to think through it. I want you to know that I'm not rushing you. I want you to know that I need to hear your thought process. I need to hear what you're thinking is the best way to approach this, what ideas you have, because that's very important. And so it's a big deal. Usually the parent will say, "You're okay, you're right. I have to do better. I do jump and run to do too much." But we have to think though that we know what the goal is for the young people, right? We want them to navigate society, their academic life, their social life effectively. We have to give them space to do that. And it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be a little painful, right? But we have to let them struggle some. We do. We cannot be giving them the play by play, sounding like we are a sports commentator, just giving them shot by shot. We can't. We have to give them some space to be creative, to determine some things, to figure it out. Now, y'all talk to me. I'm going to lean like this for a minute and blink a little slowly. Y'all talk to me. Have you ever had to have that conversation with maybe a parent, another parent, if you're an educator, right? Or do you know that you are that parent? That you know what, I need to give some more space. Be honest. Come on. I'm going to give y'all some time to think about it and reflect and marinate on it in the chat. Y'all let me know. But it's becoming more consistent. It maybe was a little more random, a little more sporadic, but it's very, very consistent. I'm finding more so these past few years with on both sides when I'm working directly with the young person and I have to call timeout, right, for the parent, or just talking to parents on the side. I said, don't swoop in so quick. Don't do that. Don't do that, right? Okay, so someone said yes, they heard all of those examples earlier, those red flags. Um, the point that their style of reasoning and explanation carries over from academics to social. That's a nugget. A lot of times we think, and I think that's something that develops more in adulthood. Like you've learned to compartmentalize, right? To say, okay, this is work and this is home. And we're about to talk about that. And I'm blinking slow and rolling my eyes. No, but this is work and this is home, that kind of putting things in their own little box and we're operating one way in this space and differently. That's not how kids live life. And y'all know I'm telling the truth. That is not how the young people live their life. Who they are is who they are. That's something that's learned. So when they're first starting out, them at school is them at is them at home. That's why there's almost that joke where when you call a parent, they say, well, they don't act like that at home. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Right. You might not react how we're reacting at school. You might not give the same response, possible consequences, but yes, they do. Yes, they do. Because that's a learned response to compartmentalize and have different sets of behaviors in different spaces. That's an adult thing. That's learned over time. Let's see. Okay, someone said I'm that grandparent. Someone else said I've been that parent sometimes. Okay. I mean, and again, this is something it's hard, y'all. I will say it's hard because your your first job is, well, as a parent, I want to make sure, it's certain things, certain criteria. You want to make sure that things are smoother, they're well equipped. But part of it is letting them struggle and discover for some of the being well equipped and being ready to go. And that seems and may feel counterintuitive, but it's necessary. It has to be a part of the process. It has to be. Now, first of all, talking about these behaviors for different spaces. I've talked about this before. I call it skill set amnesia. Now, y'all let me know. Y'all let me know in the chat. Say, ooh, yes, Sadiq. I remember when you talked about this. I call it skill set amnesia. Now, I'm saying a little more today, but basically, skill set amnesia is when we don't transfer what we know, what we learned, what we do, our usual mode of operation. right? From work. Something happens when we cross the threshold and get home. We don't take that same approach to communication and collaboration, right? We might manage teams, we might run schedules, we scaffold daily. But when it comes to the kids, to the young people, the systems are out the window, the strategies are gone, and the questions that normally work, we're not using them. We're not employing them at home. So I call that skill set amnesia. We've all been guilty. I'm not even gonna say put in the chat if you've been guilty. We've all been guilty of skill set amnesia sometimes, right? When capable and competent adults have failed to transfer, again, their strongest communication, coaching, planning tools from their professional setting to interactions at home, especially with children. We've all done it. Okay. But some of what we're going to talk about, the disconnect, is why this is happening. This is new. I haven't talked about it. I've thought about it many times. I'm like, I always wonder why I haven't talked about it, but we're going to explore it a little bit today. Why are we not transferring these skills? Okay. So in the workplace, it's a space of usually, right? I'm being funny. Is usually a space of rationale where people can get a summary, get a debrief. Maybe there's some evidence, but at home, then this becomes the lay of the land. Do it because I said so. Yeah, where was the rationale? Where was the summary? Where was the evidence? So something as simple as um, telling the young person, make sure that you brush your teeth before you wash your face. Let me stop and ask that. Do y'all know that that's a thing, and that sometimes that has to be explicitly said to young people to make sure they brush their teeth before they wash their face, right? And do you know why that's the best practice, right? We're talking about what normally happens at the workplace, where we have rationale, we have a summary, we have evidence. Something as simple as that. Make sure you brush your teeth before you wash your face. The rationale is if you get some toothpaste on your face, you can clean it off after when you wash your face. So the debrief, the summary is if we're trying to make sure we maximize our minutes in the morning, getting out the door, right? If it was still school life, then we need to make sure we do things in an order that's very efficient, where we're using our time well. The evidence is, okay, I can see on your face that you must have done it in a different order, right? If you do it in a different order, we can see. We have evidence, we have receipts. Okay. Someone say, yes, the residual toothpaste. Exactly. But that is something, and that's, something simple, that's something at home. But just think of the number of things that as adults we know, and we might tell the young people the how, do it in this order, or do it because I said so, but not necessarily the why. These young people, even Gen Z, the young adults. So Gen Z, Alpha generation, and then this year we have the beta babies, right? You all, they're very much so going to lack the context and lack why, unless we're careful about how we're giving it to them, and unless we're careful about the questions we're asking to help fill in that context. They're going to lack it. And then adults get frustrated, right? Throw up their arms and just like, what is going on? The context. Okay. But context without being spoon fed, right? Context with, like we said, the summary, the debrief, and then letting them do their experiences, their trial and errors from there. Okay. And I know that was a simple example, but again, going back to why this happens though, why we're leaving the rationale, the debrief, and the evidence at home. So for a lot of people, your emotional load is higher at home. So the stakes feel more personal. You might be tired. You want peace. You're like, I don't have time for a teachable moment. But more often than not, we have to make time, right? Your emotional load is higher, but more often than not, we have to make time. Maybe there's some role confusion, right? Where you're unsure if you're supposed to be the teacher, the parent, the supervisor, right? What role am I supposed to fulfill today? especially depending on the age of the child, aka adolescents to teenagers. It could be any of those roles, changing moment by moment, quite frankly, but making sure that you choose one and operate in it. Maybe there's a lack of visibility or reflection because of the load. We don't necessarily have time, or we don't have a moment to pause, slash we don't. Maybe we have the time, but we also don't pause to assess what tools we already have that could work. So that's the thing. So we say lack of visibility because maybe we're looking for something else. So we're like, oh, I need a certain kind of way to approach this, but you haven't reflected on, you haven't assessed what you already know and do, more than likely from work, that could help in your home life. Like that hadn't like that hadn't connected. Like maybe there wasn't that thought that some of those work skills could be making some of the conversation, communication, task at home go smoother and be a lot better. Maybe we just didn't have that time to think about it. Maybe we just didn't think about it. At work, we say things like, well, let's brainstorm some options. At home, do it now. Why can't the young person sometimes? Because I know y'all are like, Anika, what? So why can't the young person sometimes talk about different ways to approach a situation? You want them to clean their room? You're like, all right, well, go ahead and start with your why. As long as it's clean, right? Is that the goal, to make sure it's clean? So does it have to be a certain order? Does it have to be a certain order that they do it in, as long as they get it clean? So giving, again, those choices, and this is a lot of educator talk and conversation, but reminding everybody things that we know about from work, do it at home. We can give the choices. Okay, well, what do you want to do first? This or this? And you could even narrow it down if you want to. Instead of just, all right, do what you want to do first. Okay, so do you want to start with your bed or your closet? Then they chose, and then they go off and do it. Just something to think about. Y'all let me know what you're thinking about that. Also in work life, we might hear, can you walk me through your thought process? Right? Instead of like, why would you do that? We don't say that at work. Walk me through your thought process. At home life, why would you do that? That's a whole different, even we talked about the emotions. That's a different emotional response, even. Like, oh, well, why did I do this? Wait a minute. The shift is, what were you trying to do there? What were you trying to accomplish? What did you want to happen? Work life, let's debrief what worked and what didn't work. Home life, you need to fix this. Y'all let me know. I might be brushing up against some toes tonight. Y'all are quiet in the chat. I might be brushing up against some toes. I'm not going to tap dance on them. I'm trying not to. Trying not to tap dance on them. But might be brushing up against them. Instead of, you need to fix that. So, okay, what went well? And what do we need to change? Right? Work life. So let's document that so we can do this repeatedly, right? Home life, you're always forgetting. We could shift that to, how can we remind ourselves next time? What is going to be your reminder to yourself for next time? Y'all let me know if the shifts are these questions, are these shifts, these questions, are they doable to you? Do you feel like, okay, this is doable, or is this just way out of your comfort zone? Is it just like, Anika, this is too much? Is too much of a shift? Y'all talk to me for real. Let me know. Is this doable? Are these shifts easy enough? Like, Anika, you know what? I have been asking those questions that way at work. I can make some adjustments and ask differently at home. I can. Y'all talk to me. Y'all, I might be tap dancing on some toes. I don't know. Because y'all been quiet in the chat for a little bit. One of the things that I want to make sure that everyone, whether a parent or educators on here, even though we talked about skill set amnesia, remember, skill set amnesia is the tools that you already know and use at work. They just haven't been applied at home. So I want to be clear that part of the conversation and just thinking about the question differently is not that you need a new tool. You don't. You don't need a new tool. We just need better transfer. because the transfer isn't transferring, right? Think about this. Some of the things that, in terms of, we went back to the students' red flags or them answering questions, right? That's just how I do it. You didn't teach us. Will we accept that explanation from a peer or a coworker? No, we would not accept that from a peer or a coworker. So same kind of thing. If we're making sure we're transferring skills, that includes accountability, yes, and giving space to figure it out, if we're thinking about it that way. So I have a few question swaps, for our summer learning. One is reading. What do we like to ask? Y'all tell me. Tell me when you're reading, right? And you're a young person finished reading. What is one of your favorite questions to ask as a check-in? What is one of your favorite questions to ask as a check-in? Maybe a young person, you're reading with them. What's one of your go-to questions that you ask when they're reading? While y'all are typing, let's see. Okay, someone said it's doable. It's very overwhelming. It can be. It's different. It's very different for most, right? For most of us to think about these things I was doing at home, at work, and I need to transfer that at home. But remember, different behavior in different spaces, that is something that's learned. That's more of an adult thing. The kids are who they are. So we want to make sure that they have the skills that they need to be consistent academically, socially, navigating life. So we really have to mirror that for them. We have to mirror that for them. Somebody said definitely doable on a Sunday night when I'm well rested, but on a Wednesday at 7, it's different. It is. So the biggest thing is as consistently as possible. It's not going to be perfect. We're people. It's not going to be perfect, but as consistently as possible, making sure that, okay, all right, I did my thing this week. I did my best. Sometimes our best might feel like 110%. Sometimes it might be 72, but it's a strong 72. Okay. Y'all, so again, a young person may have just finished reading. Y'all didn't say it, so I'm going to say it. One of the go-to questions, people say, well, what was the story about? That's not what y'all ask. Is that not what we ask? What was it about? So people like to ask that. But again, a deeper question that'll give more insight into what students, our children, really understood from the book, from the story, was what's something this character did that surprised you? Like, what was most surprising? Oh, okay. Then they have some very specific things to talk about now, right? Or which part would you change and why? That's a lot of young people's favorite, especially, you know what, you might be surprised at different ages because you might think, oh, especially the younger people because they're super creative, right? And they're just ready to just have a whole new ending. But think about this. Y'all know one of the most common words people use to describe teenagers is critical. Like, they're just critical of everything. Let them be critical then. What would you change and why? Can you imagine how much they would go in? How much they would really lean into that task? What would you change and why? Let them be critical, y'all. Like, help them understand how to focus their critiques, right? Because if they're generally a critic of life as teenagers at that age, which they can be, let's help them channel it. Let's help them focus it. So it's not just all negative, because the reality is criticism doesn't have to be negative. It's your opinion. Now, if your opinion's always negative, right, we have another conversation for that. But again, if they're critical anyway, then why not? Why not help to channel their criticism so they can see how it applies? And actually, yeah, that we're growing their thinking skills, we're growing their communication skills, right? You're helping them build a case, build an argument, right? That's constructive, that's solid. Okay. All right, because I'm getting off task. So that's one thing. Again, for summer reading, instead of what's the story about, What's something that the character did that surprised you, and what part of the story would you change and why? Grocery store math. Part two, y'all, that's one of my favorites. Yeah, duh. Obviously, as a former math educator, right? Grocery store math, because people sleep on it, right? People don't use it enough. They don't take those moments. There's so much math all across the grocery store for all the different ages. But oh my goodness, one of the go-tos was, well, how much is it? How much is it going to cost? What if we had students start to evaluate which one gives us the better deal? Right? Which item gives us more for less? What would change if we had $10 instead of $20? Right? Not just what item would change, but thinking about the change coming back. Yo, do y'all know when I don't know when the last time you've paid with cash somewhere, but do you know how many people give you the stink eye when you have cash and you're making a payment? Because it's a lot of young people that have not dealt with cash. Y'all let me know. Has anybody cut their eyes at you when you pulled out some cash? Slash, maybe you're like, Anika, I don't know the last time I pulled out cash, and for that reason. But grocery store math, that's one of the things. Okay? So we can flip that instead of just how much is it, which item gives us more for less? What's the better deal? Y'all, it's summertime. Maybe we're doing more play with board games. Maybe you're building with Legos. Okay, board games. Instead of did you win? What if you asked, what strategy helped you the most? What was the most unexpected thing that you noticed about this game? So you're really making them really think and evaluate what's happening, right? You're really making them think and evaluate what is happening while they're playing this game. Like, yes, we're playing the game, but listen, we're trying to put our best foot forward. We're in it to win it if we can. So that's going to require some strategy. Okay, Ty said, yes, they hate when you pay with cash. All the side eye, attitude. They might have to pull out a calculator, right? Especially don't mess around and let the cents match, right? If it was $12.10 and you paid with $20.10. Okay, but all right, I'm gonna move on. So yes, so Sheila said, right, they do not like cash these days in the stores. Yeah, and this was way before a sanitation issue, right? This is something absolutely different. Screen time, y'all, screen time. We do not, summertime, we don't want to have to fight these battles, right? Because that becomes a battle sometimes during the summer. So conversations about the game, screen time, the default is, why are you still on that? Right? You spend too much time on it. And I'm talking to me and myself right now for this one, y'all, I promise. One way to flip it, and I'm working on it as well. What part of this game makes you want to keep playing? What part of this game makes you want to keep playing? Right? So it gives you some insight into one, the kind of games they like, what's motivating them. It's another conversation about strategy. A second possible question, if you had to build your own version, what would you keep and what would you change? Oh, so I got you to really evaluate this question. Excuse me, this game, right? What do you like? What don't you like? What things would you keep and why? So why do you want to change this part? Does it seem unfair to you? Does it seem, y'all, there's so many places, so far we can go with this particular question. And it's about games. We're asking them about games. How often do people stop and ask questions about games to the young people? Most people go as far as, oh, what's your favorite game? Oh, okay. And everybody skips off into the sunset. But imagine, again, we're having these meaningful conversations because we're posing meaningful questions and we're understanding what they understand or not about certain things. Again, coming back to our questions, what are we asking? Again, y'all, these chores and daily routines. Did you clean it up? Right? That's the default. Did you clean it up? Did you finish doing? Right? Just this constant checklist. What if we flipped it? So we said, what would help you remember this without reminders next time? Because we talked about the emotional toll, the emotional load. So Have that conversation. Okay, so every day I'm having to remind you of all these steps, right? It gets you get weary, you do. But seriously, what would help you remember what to do without a reminder from me? What can you do? Right? And y'all just think about this. So asking even a young person that, like when I say young, like these 6, 7 year olds that have all this tech, a lot of them will come up with the idea to create their own alarm. They know how to spell, right? Or they might need a little help, a little support. They can put a little emoji in where it's like it has a broom or something, like, oh, it's time for me to sweep. And you have removed yourself from the situation. So a lot of the things that we use to keep us organized, some of our tools, some of our organization things that just kind of help to make it a little smoother throughout the day. Why can't we start showing the young people how to use some of those as well? Or what ideas they have? They see us all day. I promise they have ideas. But have we ever asked them, okay, so if I wasn't able to remind you, how would you remember? How would you know for yourself? I know a lot of this conversation kind of starts usually at a certain age, right? This might start at a certain age, but the sooner the better, honestly. The sooner the better when we know that we have this, again, this checklist that the end result for the young people is for them to be, yes, critical thinkers, for them to be independent, for them to be resilient, right? And have some flexibility in their navigating these different spaces. Then why wait? They'll just learn how it looks at different levels. That's it. They'll just learn how it looks at different levels. That's all. Okay? So don't wait. They're watching, they're looking, they have thoughts and opinions, I promise. Someone said we grew up on because I told you so. Many people did. Indeed, many people did. But again, for okay, I'm gonna say this. So with that, with the I told you so, was sometimes we're being told because we didn't know what to do, literally, right? We didn't know what to do at the time. Slash the young people, they can look up really anything they want to know. So they know what to do, but they don't know why. They might even know how. Right? We talked about the brushing your teeth and then washing your face thing. They might know that that's the correct order, but they might not know why. And that is where we, as their adults, can support them best by filling in that context. And again, I know that we're not going to explain every single time. That's not realistic. And that's not what they need. But do they need some explanation sometimes? Yes, because they're learning and they're trying to learn holistically, right? We're trying to help them academically, socially, and again, with their critical thinking. Indeed. So we don't want robots that are just doing things just because, okay, this is what they said to do. We don't want, which, some of my former students talked about this, where until this particular class, they were nervous to even order their own fast food because an adult had always been right there with them. But they were in 8th grade, about to be in 9th grade, and they were scared to talk to someone in a box, you know, like to just voice their own opinion. This is what I want. This is what you understand. Like we're making sure that we build people that are like in the middle, that they're not robots, they're thinkers, but that they are okay with taking a risk, right? They're not doing too much risk, but they're okay with taking a risk and trying. And they've had enough experiences that they're like, okay, I think I kind of have a plan for how, even if I'm going to take this risk, I have a plan for it pretty much. Okay. Yeah. Very, very, very big deal. It's a shift. It's definitely a shift. Yeah. So talk to me. What is something that your child has been doing lately, or a child that you're around that you're like, okay, I need a way to flip this because it is wearing me out. If we haven't talked about it, if you haven't gotten an idea from something we talked about already, let me know. What is an activity, something that a habit, I'll say, that keeps showing up, that your young person, they're locked in and you are trying to break the locks, right? This is not what you want them to do. Y'all, let's talk about it. Drop it in the chat and we'll see if we can create a shift for that. A different way to approach it, a different way to ask the question. Okay. While y'all are thinking, while y'all are typing, I do want to say this. So, this particular tool I'm going to talk about is more so for educators, but we're in our pre-sale mode. Okay, we talked a lot about the question swaps and ways that we can change questions right now. But I have a tool that I've been working on. It's near and dear to my heart, and it is almost all the way complete, y'all. It actually helps to generate and adapt different prompts automatically, so you don't always have to come up with them on the spot. So it's working with AI to help leverage that. So this is more so for classroom use, maybe even homework use at home. But I call it my AI powered assessment toolkit. So you'll have done for you question templates that move students beyond guessing, right? Beyond that, I don't know. I saw it in the book. That's just how I did it, right? Those quick responses with no thought behind them. The toolkit also has ways to level up tasks for learners. So even if they're at different levels, maybe your learner has a little bit of a gap. Like right now, I know I've been having a lot of parents reach out about, okay, some of those gaps from COVID are really showing up, Mrs. Jones, slash, okay, in reading, my young person is really on it. So I want to make sure I continue to keep them at that accelerated pace, right? I don't necessarily want to slow them down. So all of this can be found in there. And just generally some tools that are anchored in AI to really transform, like exit tickets, any kind of assessment, test prep, home learning as well. I'm going to say that again, to deeper thinking opportunities. I like to say that a lot of people like to think about AI as, I call it just a hammer, right? Like if you see it as only doing this one thing, if math is only going to give the answer, that's all it can do. But in actuality, I say instead of AI being a hammer, and you're like, all it's doing is giving the answer, it's more like a Swiss Army knife, right? It has multiple facets, it's multidimensional if you know what to do with it, if you know what to look for. And so that's why also the toolkit has a quick start guide where we give you an overview of different AI tools. And depending on what you're trying to do with it, right, you have some options. So a super, super valuable resource. Let me drop our link tree where you all can see that. You can follow us on all the platforms if you have not. But there also is a link there to make sure you join the email list. Y'all, we have some freebies, some resources, 10 questions that it says every educator should be asking, but I'm going to say parents as well, right? We're our children's first teachers. So many things. You'll find the link for the pre-sale. I'm gonna say this because once it's finalized, the price will change. But the pre-sale for the AI Power Toolkit is there. So much, right? Plus, you can connect with us on all the platforms: LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, IG. And I know sometimes people have questions, but they don't want to ask in front of everybody all the time. Make sure, make sure that you slide in our DMs then, okay? Let's see. So waking up, going straight to her iPad, I blocked it down so that she can't get on it after a certain time, but she will literally sit next to it, counting down the minutes until it's unlocked. Okay. And that's real. And I'll say I've navigated that as well, honestly. So at this point, there's besides the time, because that was the loophole. My son did the same thing. Okay, so you told me a certain time. He even went back to sleep and set his alarm to wake up. How about that? Closer to the time. I said, oh, okay. So got more creative. Then there are certain things that we have to do before we see a screen, right? So it might not be all the things every day, but whether it's something creative, right? We have to have a certain amount of creation time where you're either building something, drawing something, painting something, slash maybe you're helping me cook, right? One of the meals, slash one of the more academic things. So did you read, write, or did we practice some math today? But a couple of those things have to happen before tablet time. Because yeah, summertime they think it's all gas on the tablet. They really do. on the screens, they really do. So We put in place a couple of things that happened before. Yeah, a couple of things that need to happen before the tablet. And so yeah, because I've had to walk it back a couple times, making some adjustments. So I'll say that's where we are now. Okay. Slash even asking the question like, okay, so what is it that you want to do on the tablet? And depending on the game, like if it's a does what is it? What kind of is it a game? Is it a certain like design game or then maybe there's something that you can kind of do to kind of match it to one of the tasks first. So I'm thinking, um, because if it is your daughter, maybe it's dance stuff, design things, then maybe it's like, okay, so you're either going to do some math problems, and we have some, you can use AI to make sure there's some custom problems about dance, right, for math, slash, maybe there's some research, maybe it's like a little mini research project, something about dance or a favorite dancer or different genres of dance, and she writes about it, right? Slash, maybe she just reads about it. So that could even be two separate tasks where she reads about the certain genre. I don't know if she has a favorite. She might. Maybe she's comparing two genres. Then she writes about it on the next day. But a couple things, but especially during this time and as parents, we can lock into their likes a lot more than the school year. I'll say that. Because we know a lot of things, are mandated by the school that, okay, this is the assignment. This is what we're working on. But, we can do and practice some of those same skills mixed in with the fun by making sure we're leading into their interests. Again, one example, my son really likes the Titanic. And so he actually has a YouTube channel. And so he has done different animations and voiceovers with his animation, whether it was he's done some what I want to say. Look, I don't know the term. He'll tell me. But it's some kind of still picture animation where he took actual Lego blocks and he just kept taking so many pictures so it looked like the ship slowly sank and things. So, but he did the research, he spent some time and for that he actually was on his tablet, but he wasn't on his tablet playing games, he was doing something educational. So then that's also one of my questions, one of my thoughts is like, what is it that she wants to do on the tablet? How else can we leverage the tablet for some educational things? Because besides school, the young people are used to they're used to technology at school, but they're kind of used to only doing certain things, right? Even with my older kids, right? When I was in the classroom, I would tell them, y'all know that technology was really made for information, not just entertainment, right? And they were like, what, Miss Jones? Not, I'm on IG, I'm on TikTok. So sometimes that reframe, sometimes having to reframe it for them. So again, first thought, what is she trying to do or what kind of things is she interested in on her tablet? And let's see what kind of, educational, more a little more stimulating, just to balance things that we could do in the meantime. So yes, look, I'm an 80s kid, so I know claymation like the California raisins, but it's just he just literally used it with Lego. So that's the closest thing. It's not clay, but that's the closest thing I can think of to explain it. Um yeah. But it was actual Legos, and it's the different theories for how the Titanic sank, and it's deep, y'all. It's deep. It's deep. So I like the idea of completing certain tasks aligned with interests. Definitely. Because honestly, as an educator, you can get them to do anything if you get them to do it about what they like. Anything. Middle school, we used to focus on money, sports, and I'm so mad I'm forgetting, but we had like three go-to moves. And it was like, okay, if the child is looking at the problem and they don't understand math life, let's connect it to money, let's connect it to sports or food. Right, middle school, they're hungry, they're playing sports, and they want some money. But anything seriously, right? You can do and explore any type of learning activity, right? Even like we said, we end up pressing pause some on the not as stimulating online tech things, just because we're helping them see how tech can be used for something they're interested in, but something that's also fun. Okay. All right. And so you're making me think, Tyrese, that I may go ahead and create a resource for that, just a summertime resource, just like things, right? Just some ideas before getting on the tablet. So I appreciate your question. I really do. All right, y'all. Anything else? As we're closing out. And as I'm thinking and closing out, I want to say, you all, we're already asking questions. If we're not doing anything else, we're already asking questions, and we're asking some pretty good questions, right? But now let's make sure that we make our questions great, so we can make them count. So we can make them count. And this is a little extra, but ideally, we're asking questions so that the young person is talking more than we are. We talked about that wait time, right? Where we have to let them struggle through it, maybe share what they're thinking more, and not just swoop in and answer the question and fill in their gaps for them. So we're making sure again that we're giving them some space, and ideally we're asking questions where they're talking more and speaking more than we are. Ideally. All right. And so this for perspective, that the right question doesn't just uncover an answer, it reveals thinking. That's what we want. Because life, we know life is not just about what answer did you get? What answer did you get? It's about your thinking. And that's what we want. That's what we want to know for our young people, right? For and from our young people. Yeah, so that's what really, not just summer learning, but we know that's what strong parenting is about. Understanding how they think so we can support them there. Okay. Oh, let's see. My children are grown, but when they were small, I'd buy word towels and they had to pull out a handful and make words. 1 hour of reading and write a story. This was before TV. Yes. So, but just think though, now young people in 2025 as well, the TV was like the one screen at the time, maybe video games, right? But now we have computers, TVs, video games, tablets, right? Is easily 5 screens, easily, right? That they have access to really quickly, maybe before even coming out of their room. Maybe before even coming out of their room. So that's why I appreciate the question, because this is real, it's very relevant. Okay. So definitely a checklist. And you want them, and I'll say this. And so another thing that some parents, I know I said I was wrapping up. I promise. Last thing, y'all. I know that some parents battle with balancing. I want my young person to have fun, but I also want to make sure they're achieving. But we have to be super, super careful about that, because there's literally, you may have heard of math anxiety. You know, I focus on math a lot, math and SEL, right? The social emotional. A lot of people develop math anxiety by first grade. So, depending again on our language, our talking, our questions around anything, but especially math, is developing early. So, what we find is some parents are pushing hard, like, okay, this, first grade, second grade, whatever grade didn't go well. So now I'm throwing you in all of this stuff during the summer, and that's sucking, some of the fun, some of the joy out of summer, slash just making sure we're very intentional really throughout the year, right? So like, yes, summer is a special time. Should it be all the way relaxed? Personally, I don't think. I think it should be just a nice blend. It should be more relaxed in the school year, right? Especially for younger kids. But being careful that the school year wasn't too relaxed, because we have other things going on too. Because the reality is the young people are very stressed, and it's the adults' fault. Not that I'm not saying just their adults. I'm not talking about the parents like you did it. I'm not saying that, but just like society as a whole, because there's a lot of demands on these young people that other people, when they were young people, didn't have to deal with. I'll say it that way. So just being very careful about the balance. That yes, we're having fun. Yes, we're writing, we're reading, doing different things, but even breaking it up as much as we can, because they had a lot more reading, writing, and math throughout the school year, most of them, than any other generation, realistically. Okay. But I appreciate all the engagement and comments. And y'all know where to find me. Y'all can write me here, all the other platforms. You have any questions about the AI assessment power toolkits? Y'all, okay, because that's is really awesome. This is phase one. I didn't even tell y'all that part. This is phase one. There's a second part that's digital. This first part is it is digital in terms of some PDFs, things you can write on, all of that, right? But phase two has some online modules, right? Some more interactive spaces. I'll talk about it when it's time, but just know that this is phase one. So again, I appreciate you all showing up, spending some time. June, we're going to be talking about a lot of things on both sides of the coin, I'm calling it. So talking to parents and educators because it's summertime, right? We're going to be talking about both. We're going to be talking about both sides because they're really not separated. They're really not as far apart as people like to make it to be, right? And we're trying to get back to that united front for sure. So we're just making sure that for the month of June, especially, we're making sure the parents and educators, we're uniting in this space, having these conversations because we're here for the same people. We are. I just want to make sure we all remember that. All right. All right, y'all. So that's it. Signing out for real this time. Y'all have a good evening. Bye bye.